plans can be very expensive. And maybe that's true for you as well, but I know for my family, my cell phone bill and my Wi-Fi internet bills are as high or higher than my heating bills. So it's a challenge for many of them to provide adequate access to the internet. Many of our families have no or limited service. Some of them rely on their cell phones to do all of their internet access. Barriers for them include cost, but also language and technological dexterity. So for many of them, the barriers are so high. COVID has really highlighted the importance of digital access, and I'm sure you're well aware of this, but for us, even as a landlord, we can't send notices to all of our residents instantaneously. We still have to produce flyers because many of our residents don't have email, don't read email. Of course, telehealth. We work closely with other groups like Virginia Hospital Center and the Arlington Free Clinic. And as they transitioned to telehealth, it was a challenge for our residents to be able to participate in healthcare. And of course, the most obvious one is school at home. We have about 900 residents that are under 18. And for them, being unable to access their classes and participate in school was a real hardship. That has been changing, but through the diligent work of Arlington Public Schools and Arlington County. The devices that the county provided, well, I guess the schools have provided with county funding, have been very meaningful. So we understand that almost everyone in our properties now has a device, and that's meaningful for the entire family. We do know that, you know, the family will rely sometimes on the Wi-Fi and the device that the child has. Comcast Internet Essentials opening up their criteria early in the pandemic was also very meaningful. We always had a Comcast person or a flyer come to our resident fairs, and the criteria earlier were fairly narrow. You had to have a school child of a certain age. By opening it up to any low-income households, we saw a lot more participation. And the county's funding through the schools, again, for families for a year of free internet. It's been a little bit bumpy rollout, but we think that's very attractive as well. So we care about this issue a lot, and that's just a very kind of brief overview, but we understand that it impacts everything our residents do. Applying for unemployment insurance, you may or may not have heard that, you know, the new unemployment insurance program, the 800 numbers were always busy. And the answer was, well, apply online. Well, that's just fine and dandy if you have high-speed internet and, you know, English is your first language and you're fairly with filling out forms online. It's not if those are all barriers to you. So over and over again through COVID, we found that the digital divide was exacerbating the divide for our residents and the hardships they were enduring. So we were very honored several years ago to be selected for the Digital Divide project at Arlington Mill, and know it's had a lot of support, had a lot of interaction with Jack Belcher and his staff. Very well-intentioned and high priority goal. As you all know, it's been a little bumpier rollout than I think any of us would have liked. And I'll turn that over to Nathaniel to give an overview of the program, and then we can both answer questions.
Sure. Great. Hi, this is Nathaniel speaking from Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing. I work there in the capacity as data analyst, and I was also part of the oversight on rolling out the project at Arlington Mill. So a little bit of context about the project. Some of you might have heard this before, but in case some of you haven't. So Arlington Mill is a 122-unit, 100% affordable rental property serving Arlington residents with incomes below 60% of the area median income. In 2016, APA was approached by the county about piloting a program to provide free internet access to low-income residents. Arlington Mill was selected in particular because it shared a garage with the Arlington Mill Community Center and was already on the county's Connect Arlington fiber ring. So there's reduced infrastructure costs to get the pilot up and running there. Over the summer of 2018, the building was retrofitted to support a mesh wireless network. Hardwired access points were installed in strategic locations in the hallways and were configured to relay bandwidth wirelessly to access points that were located inside each of the apartments. In the fall of 2018, the network went live. In order for the residents to receive an access point and a free laptop, residents were required to either pass a digital literacy test or to participate in a digital literacy program. The project was made possible by the collaboration between APA, Arlington County, an internet service provider, and a wireless-focused technology company and their tech support contracting group. There were a couple lessons learned on the infrastructure and programming sides of the project. So the mesh network worked initially, but there ended up being some issues with its implementation, or not implementation, but just the nature of the mesh network ended up being problematic, namely because the access points that were remotely connected, if there was an issue with them, IT support had to have someone physically interact with it or connect it to a physical line before they could do any remote servicing for it. So our recommendation on that side is to use hardwired connections from the telecom closet to the unit, as opposed to using a mesh network, which would allow for full remote support by any IT. Another lesson that we learned on infrastructure, I think, was to use a managed ISP who provides full customer support and distributes their own access points. In practice, we found we know it's not scalable to provide internet at a property and have basic customer support performed by site staff and corporate staff, who then coordinate with a third party for technical solutions. When a novel issue arises with the network, there are 3 separate parties that have to be coordinated to find a solution. In terms of programming, requiring prospective residents or participants to attend digital literacy training or take a digital literacy test before gaining access to the network is good in theory, but it ends up lengthening rollout and is challenging for residents who are working 2 or more jobs. Scheduling along with managing how new move-ins get access also presented challenges. So in 2020, APA switched to a by request sign-up strategy, and there are currently 77 households participating in the pilot. So yeah, so that's our overview. So at this point, I think any questions?
Yeah, and I'm sure others will have as well. But is as you look at new properties, right, and based on what you learned at Arlington Mill, moving forward, what do you think the best partnership is between Access and Connect Arlington for some of these affordable housing opportunities? I mean, if you were, ideally, based on what you've learned thus far.
Do you want to give that a try, Nathaniel?
So in terms of using Connect Arlington, so if I understand the question, I think to use Connect Arlington as a solution, there would have to be some intermediary between the end property and some other group that coordinates the ISP, that coordinates the hardware distribution and installation, that coordinates whatever tech specs there needs to be, that's dealing with the switches, that's dealing with any router updates that need to happen, any firewalling that has to happen, and is coordinating with the ISP out in Ashburn or wherever that's actually getting the bandwidth out to the property, and is also providing the customer support. Because I think from our perspective, that's fine for one project, but as soon as you start getting to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, that just quickly becomes unmanageable. Especially if the infrastructure for the different projects is different. Like affordable housing providers we're not technical experts in this field, and that's a challenge for us, I think, from the corporate side, in terms of like, do we have to be employing people full time, and how does that hit? Yeah, so
okay,
that's I think the main difficulty is just having someone that is managing that full network that's operating on Connect Arlington. Yeah.
And is there any data that shows that the access people had really did change their story or change their lives because they had access to high-speed internet? Was there any when they moved into the property and then they had access to high-speed internet? Was there a Is there any data to suggest that this really did? I mean, our sense is by having access, it really makes a difference. But I wondered if there was any specific stories gathered or data gathered in terms of how it might have changed lives by having that access.
So as part of the grant, we do surveying on the residents. Unfortunately, recently, because of COVID-19, we've not been able to do in person at the property surveys. We tend to send out a digital survey, but we only receive 6 responses back, which is it's hard to
It's low, right?
pull. Yeah, exactly. I'd have to dig back through our files to look at previous surveys. I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. I don't know, Nina, if you remember anything.
Yeah, because the rollout was quite bumpy, I think we actually were surveying people constantly, but the focus was not how did it change your lives, but is it working? And we had a lot of people who were like, I can't do homework, I can't stream this video, and that was also a reminder, I think, for us that there is a component of resident education there, which we tried to get over by having, a digital competency test and free coursework at the very beginning. But we discovered later, as Nathaniel said, that just became a barrier to access. That people didn't have the time to do it. So it's not clear to us totally. I mean, we definitely know that digital access is important, and I think the work that APS is doing now, Arlington Public Schools, our staff are telling us they're seeing a significant difference. That when a child is online, and sometimes I think it starts with the children, frankly, when the children are online and sometimes even have a social worker from the schools helping them to log in, making sure everything's working, well, then the whole household is actually online too. So again, that's a little anecdotal. We had hoped to do more survey collection, but again, it ended up being a bit of an uneven rollout. So there wasn't a sort of stopping point to do a comprehensive survey.
Okay, and I have a couple more questions, but I'll open it up to the commission. People have questions they'd like to ask Nina and Nathaniel?
Yeah, I would ask Nathaniel. You mentioned the availability of an internet service provider, kind of providing a fully managed service as kind of a lesson learned, best practice to going forward. Do you see that available in the marketplace today, where if you were to receive another grant, you could go out and get that service, or is that a gap?
On Connect Arlington specifically?
Just generally speaking, right now, is it available to you in the marketplace if you were to receive the funding?
Well, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I mean, there's Comcast and Verizon that you can get bulk service agreements with into the buildings. I think there's a couple other agencies as well. I think Starry's one, Boingo, White Sky is another one that I've heard of recently. Yeah. So they're not necessarily Connect Arlington solutions though.
Sure. So the impediment is from that perspective is more the availability of funding to provide that service.
Right. Yes.
Okay. And Jackie, you're next.
Yes. You mentioned training, but I recall from a previous presentation about Arlington Mill that you were having difficulty arranging for people to get the training or complete the training. Can you tell us what % of those have now received the training and have some degree of digital literacy to be able to be using the services?
So I don't have a specific percentage off the top of my head, but the vast majority of those 77 households did participate either in the training or tested out of the training. So they took a literacy test on digital means to get out of that.
What about?
Does that answer?
What about?
Sorry.
What about all of those people who've been connected through the schools this year? The additional households that have been, besides Arlington Mill on the test, additional connections, because you were talking about earlier about not having access made it very difficult to access lots of different life services. But if people get a connection, but they don't get training and they don't have internet, literacy, then they're probably still not being able to use it for some of those services. So I'm trying to get an understanding of how much education and training has gone with this effort.
Well, our resident services staff are regularly interfacing with our residents, particularly now in COVID, to help provide access. So they literally have been on the phone with people saying, click here, here's how to do this, here's how to do that. So that has been a goal. We have, Nathaniel's on the tech side, but we have 5 staff who basically have been doing a lot of phone calling, and they have been helping people one-on-one. And I think what I've heard from our staff is that they've had kind of a similar effort on the school side. So when they find a school that says we haven't been able to log in, they connect them with a social worker or some kind of coordinator from the public schools who kind of calls them and does it all remotely, but helps them to figure out how to log in. So I do think there is, some resources. We also have contracted with Computer Corps, who provided English language computer training. That was part of the Arlington Mill pilot, and we've offered that at other properties. And we've partnered with Edu Futuro, who's offered Spanish language computer training classes. So, it's something ongoing that we've been doing. And again, sometimes one-on-one and sometimes in the class format. Particularly that was possible before COVID.
Thank you.
Other questions? Nina, has COVID really been a double-edged sword in a way? I mean, on one hand, it's been difficult, obviously very difficult for people to access unemployment, but on the other hand, hasn't it raised the issue? I mean, really pointed out in a stark way the inequality of digital access and how it's impacting the population you serve?
Yeah, calling it a two-edged sword is a little it's a little optimistic, but it certainly has brought the conversation out. And I know we've had conversations with several members of the General Assembly who have been working on this. There is now a digital divide committee in our statewide association, the Virginia Housing Alliance, and they've been working with a group of people from different state agencies, really trying to merge the interests of rural broadband access with urban affordable access. And I think that was a little bit of a new thing for people. Rural broadband was kind of being discussed a lot in the Virginia General Assembly, and I think sort of highlighting that there's another whole population here that has physical access but not technological or monetary access. We're actually co-hosting a session at GMU next month talking about the digital divide. I can put that in the chat box if you want.
Oh, great. I was just going to ask you if we could, that'd be great because Angela will include it in the minutes, and that'd be wonderful for us to know about.
So the school, I think, initiative, the, whatever it was, 500,000 or $1 million to Arlington Public Schools was actually really positive. And I talked to leaders from other communities who were saying, I wish we had that. In fact, a supervisor in Fairfax County said, we looked at Arlington and we wish we had that kind of resource. So I think it's still not enough, and not it's not there yet. But I definitely think you're right. It has raised up the issue during COVID.
So ideally, moving forward, Nina, what's kind of on your wish list? I mean, for this in terms of the housing in Arlington, and obviously we kind of see the housing and digital equity, digital access as being partners, considering where they live. If they can have digital access, that makes a difference. But I mean, you've been in this fight a long time. What would be ideal for you?
I think ideal would be to have sort of a single point of contact and a reasonably priced bulk internet provider for all of our properties. I mean, I think that would be ideal. So we could just, we've priced it a little bit, as Nathaniel said, had preliminary conversations with Comcast, Verizon, and some of these other groups, Boingo, Star. There's 2 barriers to that. One is cost. So trying to make sure that we get it at a price we can afford. That's an operating cost that we did not have in our budget. But also, and I know I heard there's someone here from Verizon and Comcast, that we have signed some installation agreements that actually prohibit us from providing bulk internet. So we need some assistance in getting those agreements rewritten so that we're allowed to do that.
So that's actually a barrier, the current framework at the moment.
Yes. So now that we're aware of that, we are not signing those installation agreements, but the way it has worked for us in prior multifamily buildings, Verizon and Comcast will wire our buildings for free, which is a nice advantage. But in the, 20-page document, there's a clause in there that says we can't provide bulk free internet. So as we're doing new projects, we are not executing that agreement, and we're looking for some other options. But I do think that the way it's structured now, that's a barrier for our existing portfolio.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And if there are any other lessons learned that Nathaniel, once you all look at that, if there's anything else that you want to make sure we know of, that would be great, just so we can get a sense. Because one of the things you probably saw on our agenda later, we'll be making recommendations to the board about state legislative issues, right? What are some of the issues that we think should really be looked at? And of course, what you mentioned, Nina, I love the phrase, the urban affordable access, right? As opposed to just the rural broadband access. So that's another part. So that would be helpful if we if we knew some of the lessons learned and had some basis for that. That'd be great. I'm mindful of the time. Any other questions people have? One more question before we Nathaniel and Nina get to the next meeting they have. I'm not seeing any hands up if I'm missing somebody. All right. Well, thank you so much, Nina and Nathaniel. We really appreciate the update, and you're doing great work, and clearly this is something that we really need to watch and see how we can actually get this a higher profile in terms of that urban affordable access. So thank you. And any other information? And did you put in the chat the GMU thing, Nina, or
Let me just take another minute to pull it up. I know it's they're having this sort of 2020 series, 2020 innovation or something. So it'll just take me.
Great. No, that's fine. And feel free. I just wanted to make sure that you had some time before your next meeting.
Right before my 7 o'clock.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Right. And Nathaniel, I don't know if I missed anything on these last questions too.
No, I think you covered everything.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And you're more than welcome to stay if you'd like. Holly is from DTS, from in Jack's shop, is next. She's going to give us an update on digital equity. So you may find our next item interesting. So Holly, why don't you, if you wouldn't mind taking it away, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I'm going to share my screen in a presentation. Yeah, and it's many of the things that you were talking about, Nina, you'll see reflected in some of the presentations. So if you can listen, that would be great. But if you can't, it's okay. Let's see.
Mary, I apologize. I think Mike Carlton is audio only, so he can't raise his hand and would like to pose a question. Mike?
Okay, Mike, are you on? Mike?
Oh, he said he's muted by the host.
Angela, you want to unmute him?
Oh my goodness.
Stand back and stand by.
I don't see where he's muted.
There's a saying, what's understood.
I don't either.
Racist.
John, can he relay it to you, or is he emailing you, or what is he doing?
He texted me.
Okay, can he text you the question? Because again, I just want to be mindful that since Nita's got another meeting, I want to make sure she has an opportunity to get ready for that one.
Only understand all this before.
I don't see where he's muted.
Confusion. It's all out in the open in 2020. Consider it.
Sounds like we're getting news from somewhere.
Yeah, somebody's news is on in the background, that's for sure.
All right.
I don't have a response from him.
Okay. All
Mary,
right. And
apologies.
all right.
Oh.
No, that's all right. Okay.
Which phone number is he?
He's saying he wanted his audio connection to be two ways. So I think he has that potentially.
*6, he can unmute.
There you go, Mike. *6.
Oh, okay, good. He's got it.
Apologies for the interruption, Mary.
All right, John. We were exactly on time, but we will be done by 7:30 today. All right. Thank you. I see it in the chat, Nina. Thanks so much. Oh, that'd be very interesting.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, what we can do is if Mike isn't able to connect, we will make sure that we email you that question, Nina, so that we can get an answer and we can include it in the minutes. All right.
Absolutely. Glad
All
to.
right.
All right. Have a good meeting.
Thanks
Good
so
to you.
much. Take care.
Bye.
Holly?
Yep. Okay, I am going to share my screen. Let me turn off my video so it's not slowing anything down. I will share my presentation. Does everybody see it?
I see it. Thanks so much.
Awesome. All right, great. Just a quick overview. I want to talk about a needs analysis that we ended up doing at the very beginning of COVID, which reflects some data points around a lot of the anecdotal information that Nina was providing. Some of our community engagement efforts, and then a progress update since COVID. I haven't been to the ITAC, and I couldn't even remember, I think it was last summer, that Caitlin and I came and spoke to the ITAC of where we are now, which has significantly progressed forward from the last time we spoke. So just before I get into the needs analysis, and I will try to cover everything quickly and some of these slides faster than others. We had started an engagement as part of our digital equity effort, realizing that it's really important to make sure that the voices of those people who are impacted are elevated and heard and captured in our effort. So we were engaging with the company Rheingold to survey residents and hold a number of focus groups. And the first focus group was scheduled to be March, I think, 12th, and then didn't happen. And then made a decision of, well, should we go forward? Should we not go forward? And through that decided, you know what, COVID is such a transformative event. Let's capture this information. So we made some changes to what we were going to be focusing on to expand to increase COVID and maybe shorten some of the other questions. What we ended up with generally was, understanding what are households generally paying for the internet, what type of devices do they have, how reliable do they view their services, and how has COVID impacted their priorities. So just quickly on the survey, it happened in June. There were 200 telephone interviews focusing on the areas of oversampling and areas of most need, 222, 03, 04, and 06. And then the focus groups, there were 28 residents who were interviewed, trying to focus on a mixed group of characteristics, including minority, older adults with low income, and then individuals with disabilities. So generally, when you look at the cost of internet subscription, you'll see that, as Nina was saying, that cost aspect is important to a lot of residents. And almost half of these households are paying more than $100 a month for internet. And they tried to ask the question, so they were kind of teasing out, the internet piece of it. Devices, and make sure y'all can see this a little bit. So this is an interesting piece, is that 77% of residents have a device, but 74% of the households who were surveyed have 4 or more devices, which is an interesting aspect to consider and think about. And obviously, as you see, cell phone and laptop are, some of the greatest numbers. The cell phone is also equivalent to what laptop is. Internet connectivity reliability. 62% said it was reliable, but when you break it down between families who have school-age children, they were saying they had issues connecting 50% of the time. And the information was provided that it was a pre-existing problem, but then it was made even worse by COVID. And the connectivity issues seem to be even higher for those in older apartments, and so that once again those with school-age children. In financial priorities, this kind of shouldn't surprise anybody, but obviously rent and mortgage ranked the highest, with 63% ranking it as the highest priority. Cable and the internet ranks down as a third priority for 13%. So still you're looking at prioritizing electricity and water and grocery as it should be, and so that means there's often less funding and less money for the cable and internet. Impact of COVID-19. So to summarize, the 54% of surveys respondents who had children had distance learning. With distance learning had issues. They said that they were exacerbated. Also aligned with what Nina was saying, finding that with adults working from home, that use of the internet, not just by the school children, but by other members of the family, went up significantly. Some of the things they were interested in from a focus group was more choice, lower cost plans, affordability, or if not free internet for affordable housing. What they were looking at from a COVID-19, kind of breaking it down from a data perspective, that better pricing and better quality is significantly above any other part related to service, and kind of once again it aligns with some of the information that I think you're hearing from Nina and Nathaniel about the training and the access, but it's really better quality and better pricing. Some of their recommendations: encourage competition, make sure that the Internet Essentials is widely publicized, offer free or Wi-Fi to allow more people to connect, improve the broadband quality, and then once again, the same thing that you're hearing a lot of this from Nina and Nathaniel, languages, and making sure that you are framing it in a context both culturally and data related to what's relevant to these groups. So as you notice, I'd said that survey happened in June. And so we were starting to move on COVID, but what I'd like to kind of talk about first are some of the other community engagement efforts that we were working on, and then dive into what we were doing since COVID. So since we met, I think we published a website. So if you're looking for any information, I used to actually have it on a link on this presentation, but for some reason it didn't present very nicely. But if you look up Arlington County Digital Equity, you'll come to our digital equity website, which has the past presentations, all of the data that I just spoke to from the survey, both a summary report and a detailed report are available. The other thing that's available is a digital equity resource map, which is a map that we created in conjunction with David Herlihy's team to show where are all of the Wi-Fi hotspots that the county provides. It was originally, before COVID, it was both internal Wi-Fi, external Wi-Fi, as well as places where there are printers, computers, but really since a lot of the locations are closed now, it's a proximity to where are those Wi-Fi hotspots. And then continue to engage the Digital Inclusion Network. Our last communication honestly hasn't been since June, but we have been working and planning, and now that we have a staff that was out on maternity leave that's back, trying to plan our next Digital Inclusion Network meeting to give everybody the update on the survey, as well as an update of where we are, and then kind of looking at our policy framework document. What's happened since COVID? So one of the things that we did first was make sure that the free clinic had a connection to the Virginia Hospital Center. So the free clinic sees roughly 1,600 patients a year. These are, as someone had framed it, kind of the lowest of the low, the people who don't have Medicaid, the people who might not necessarily have access to any other service if this opportunity doesn't exist. So the infrastructure is there. Unfortunately, because of some other priorities, the hospital is still working to make sure that the hospital system of Epic is available to the free clinic. And I believe that was supposed to happen in August, but now is scheduled for January, which will make the access to data and allow the doctors to be able to put the information in significantly faster and easier. And when you're talking about a volunteer staff, being able to save minutes on what you're entering is a critical component. We already talked about the survey and focus groups. We worked very closely with Comcast. I see Kevin is on the line. And that was one of the first things that we did, working with schools and using CARES funding to provide access to Comcast Internet Essentials. I think schools quickly realized that the MiFi devices that they had provided were really not intended for full distance learning. And the fact that, as we've talked about before, that the families were connected, so you couldn't separate the student's internet need from the family internet need, that there was something more that was required. As of Friday, I believe there were 457 families connected. I'm sure that number has gone up. Represents a little over 800, probably a little over 800 school children. Just to put that in perspective, there are around 1,000 school children who had requested MiFi devices. So getting the word out there and making sure that people understood and getting online and getting through the program. There has been a lot of work that's happened on the school side and on Comcast side to kind of help streamline and make things easier. So that's been, an effort that I think has made a difference in the connectivity. In addition, we have actually 20 now hotspots, 19 advertised. One just came up this week at Oakland Park, and it's not advertised yet. But there is signage up for all but 4 that are a little bit of trying to figure out where the sign goes. We're averaging 5,000 plus connections. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is logging on and spending a significant amount of time, but the availability of it has proven valuable. And we've heard community feedback from residents that this is a resource that's helpful to have. In addition, we have a number of pop-up Wi-Fi hotspots. We are providing intersections along Columbia Pike. There are 4 locations where there are now pop-up Wi-Fi hotspots that are only broadcasting the APS network. And then schools, and this number has actually increased. It's not 7, it's 10 plus. There are 10 schools, and the schools are working at their school location to also provide outside Wi-Fi, which has been great, and hopefully will be something that students will be able to take advantage of, in addition to the other opportunities of what we're looking at. Legislative engagement, I think Nina talked a little bit about this, but there has been a lot of attention that has been given to digital equity. And as she said, I think the corner has turned, that it's not just rural broadband that's being discussed, recognizing that rural, they do have a lot of challenges, but that affordability piece of it is a real challenge within the county. There are going to be families that, are residents within the county and live within the county that, for a variety of different reasons, aren't in a living situation that they can take advantage of even a program like Comcast Internet Essentials, or that they are can afford, if they, for whatever reason, they're not a school-age children, they don't qualify for the program that we're offering. As a role in the government, looking for how we can make sure that all are connected is part of what we're supposed to be doing. What actually happens from the legislative side right now, we've got language that focuses on during the terms of a pandemic, supporting keeping distance learning available is worded in there. But there is interest in looking at other opportunities and other ways of doing things. Last week, we just executed a feasibility study with a nonprofit entity. So some of the challenges that Nina and Nathaniel talked about for Arlington Mill. So Arlington Mill was a pilot. There were a lot of lessons learned. And some of the things that we've taken away, we're trying to look at, incorporate into what would be potentially our next step. Still trying to consider, if we were to connect to CAF properties, what would that look like? as Nina was saying, having the single point of contact. But I think it's also setting the expectation of what type of service are you planning on delivering, and who is your target, and who are you making sure that you're prioritizing and getting that access up front. So we are working with AHC. And right now, it's not doing any building, but kind of talking through and putting everything on paper to understand what would costs be like. What would an engagement need to look like of how you're reaching out, and what level of expectation of digital literacy or training? What does a help desk look like? Does a help desk go as far as I need you to be connected, or does it go further? So it's been a very good exercise, I think, as we're just starting this. It's a short turnaround time of looking at doing something in 4 to 6 weeks that will then bring to the board as a data point, as an information, deciding, okay, this is only one piece of a lot of different pieces of information. What do we do next? What's the next step that we should be taking? We just found out also last week, a lot of the Wi-Fi that I've talked about outside of the Comcast Internet Essentials is outside, as we are moving into, hopefully, weather that's a little bit cooler. Being outside isn't necessarily always suitable for everybody. How can we try to use new technology, and is there a way that we can provide additional connectivity? So not to get too into the technical weeds, but CBRS is a broadband spectrum that we're exploring and interested in piloting. We've gotten money from the governor that has to be spent by December 25th. And our goal is to try to target within the range around Arlington Mill neighborhood, not the community center and residents, but Arlington Mill neighborhood, as well as around Randolph Elementary, where there are still a number of children whose living situation is such that they don't have the connectivity. Is how can we help those families who still don't have connectivity get the access that they need, and to be able to provide that access to those families. I apologize if you can hear the screaming in the background. And then finally, as we are always talking about this, something that sits in the back of my mind is the policy framework, and that's what the Digital Equity Action Plan that we were working on before, and I still see as an important component in kind of laying out a roadmap of where we want to go, and from a board perspective, from a community perspective, maybe we're not doing everything now, but let's be clear of where we think we can go and what the impact and what the outcome is that we're hoping to try to achieve. And I think that's all I have. So that's where we are.
Done a lot since we last saw you. Holly, does the board have targets for what Nina was referring to, urban affordable access? Have they talked about targets yet in terms of? Okay.
They have not talked about targets, no.
Okay. All right. They just know it's an issue.
They know
it's
an issue. Yes.
And then you all will, let me make sure I've got the sequence right. You all will go with the plan, the deep plan.
So we would like to go with a deep plan. I think we've got several hurdles to go through to get to that, but we have a draft plan that we had started working with in our digital inclusion network back in March, and have tried to incorporate some of the lessons learned and information from COVID to bring it to the group as a kind of our final draft before we're saying, oh, now we'd like to be able to move it towards the board. What's the next step?
Okay. I have one last question, then I'll open up to the rest of the commission. We're going to be considering legislative agenda items later on in this agenda. From your vantage point, given what you've already seen, what do you think is the most important thing to have be considered on the state legislative agenda for this area?
Yeah, I think it's the opportunity to have options. I think it's the opportunity, as Nina was saying, to consider the affordability piece of it. So, how we word that, we're not looking to, stop competition or not work with other partners, but I think what can we do to use our tools and make sure that we are using our resources the best that we can to help the group who's traditionally left behind.
Mhm.
So however that needs to be worded.
Right. No, great. John?
Thanks, Mary. I noticed in the survey data, the ranking of priorities, the bill for cable/internet that question was bundled. Was that question bundled in the survey, or just how you briefed it out?
Let me go back and look at that real quick.
I would be interested to understand if in the data, if people think about those things differently, and if they're ranking television or video versus internet access differently. I think probably in the last 10, 20 years, people's perceptions about what's valuable to them have changed in that space.
Yeah, I believe it was probably bundled in that question. I mean, there's looking at it. I need to go back and look at their report to confirm that, but I would say that it probably was.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Holly? All right. Holly, we'll want an update. I'm sorry we couldn't get you in last. You wanted to come in and tell us in September, but we were back to back. So this worked out really well though, because you really dovetailed Nina.
Yes.
Well, so thank you.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
And we've had some progress even since then. So it was great to be able to add in those additional items that we were talking about.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And as always, you're more than willing to stay, but we know that you have family in the background there. So,
not only that, it's my husband's birthday, so I need to go.
Oh my goodness. Well, tell him the happy birthday and sorry to keep you. All right.
Thank you for the opportunity. Great to see y'all.
Great to see you. Take care, Holly.
Bye.
We have the meeting minutes next, but I thought, David, if you're around, I'm going to take privilege here and move up. You were on the agenda. We took you off the agenda, and there were a couple of questions. In terms of accessing, just in general, in the time of COVID, have people had issues accessing some of these meetings from getting onto Microsoft Teams, or is there any? You noticed the question Mike had you might have noticed the question Mike had in the chat box. Any issues in terms of accessing board meetings or
Not really.
commission
No.
meetings?
I mean, we have some odds and ends, obviously, with connectivity issues, mostly on the user end. We've seen that. Examples of, somebody, a spouse running Amazon in the background or Netflix or a kid streaming things. We've seen a lot of that, and that's not a specific Teams issue, and there's not much you can do about that, unfortunately. But in terms of connectivity with the service itself, no, it's been running fine.
Okay. All right. And then David, you know that not that you wanted all that publicity, but everyone now knows how important it is to have to not have a cable cut, right? So you just want to give us a brief. I think you sent an article, which we'll make sure that Angela gets that in our minutes about what the update was. But you just want to give the commission a brief overview of what happened with the cut and how you all responded and took mitigating action and all those things. Just wanted to get it directly from you. I thought commission members would appreciate hearing it.
Yeah, the cut specifically, I can't overly speak to. I can talk to the website piece of that.
Great.
A little bit better than the website on the digital side. Website, we had some instability on the site, so we actually pulled that down, and as part of that, we'd actually moved our voting site off to another platform, and that's part of a bigger plan that we have to redo the website that I think we've been talking about for about a year, and we're going to start getting rolling on that. So there'll be more details on that coming up in the next couple of months. But we had that sort of instability. We took a look at everything behind the scenes to make sure the platform was stable, and then we were able to get that stood back up and stabilized and got all the services back up and running. So we're fully operational. Keep an eye on things as always. especially around elections and whatnot. We're obviously keeping an eye on that. But otherwise, the site is back
Great.
and back in business.
Great. Good.
Mary, I can speak to the fiber cut if you like.
Okay, Jack, thanks. Thanks so much.
Yeah. So what happened was the Connect Arlington itself, the ring that goes through the county, is totally redundant. So
Yes, we remembered that.
so that's how it works. If you have a cut, it goes they all home back to a fire station. So all of a sudden you have a cut, it goes the other way. So okay, we've got a problem here, so let's restore. But what happened is that we have, and the schools have, a pipe that they procured to go to Equinix, where this is the big server in the skies. This is May East, as it's called.
Yes, yes, uh-huh.
Yeah, and so we designed our route from one place and another place, so the diversion routes. So when the fiber cut took place, it took out one of our routes. We turned over and failed over to the second route. Unfortunately, what happened is the schools back in 2019 vacated the Ed Center, and they moved to the SciFax facility down on Washington Boulevard. In so doing, how it happened, there was a loss of communications in terms of, is somebody hooking this back up again for the alternative route?
Oh, my word.
And so, and this is not to blame schools. I take as much blame as the schools, but it was a verbal communication. They walked out the door and said, "Hey, you guys gonna hook us back up?" "Yep, we'll hook you back up." Nobody's monitoring it. Nobody's complaining, and it's like insurance policy. Sure. You don't need it until it happens.
So you need it.
And then all of a sudden they got cut, and they went to failover, and they had no failover. So embarrassing in part of the county and the schools, to be honest with you. And what we're doing now, both Raj and I are working very closely. We've got diverse routes. They should be diverse routes, and so something like this should not happen again. Now, if you're a student, you're happy because you had a snow day in October.
Right.
If you're a parent, you're particularly annoyed that this happened. So this is not a fault of one person. It's all of us. It just fell through the cracks. So what we've done is now both Raj and I have said, you do not ask for anything in terms of connectivity to outside of the county, Connect Arlington, unless you put it in writing, you document it, you monitor it, and we make sure we have a date certain to replace it. And I think that's helpful. But again, it's a learning process, and I think this is a major improvement over where we were. And you and I would talk about the fact that county and schools don't talk.
Right.
You saw what Holly reported on today. We're working hand in hand.
I know, that's marvelous.
It's amazing. So my hats off to Raj and his team. And he feels as bad as I do that this happened, but it happened. It's one of those things. Human error, it happens. And so hopefully it won't happen again. Hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that does. That does. And I'm very thankful it wasn't on election day and you'd already moved the platform. Thank you. So could have been much worse, Jack. Any other questions for Jack or David? Okay. The next thing on our agenda was we're moving back into the meeting minutes, which and Martha, did you have a question? Did you have a question? Oh, I think you're muted.
No longer muted.
Now you're not. Good.
Okay.
Perfect. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Jackie and I both were having difficulty, and we didn't know where the difficulty lay. Is this connected to the county's phone system? And you know how it has, if you want to have a special pickup, press this, and then about 6 or 10 presses later, you're finally where you need to be. So if Jack is still there, is that part of, because we couldn't get ours to work, it kept saying there was a broad-based problem.
Are you talking about the county services on the data of the fiber cut? Or are you talking about the schools?
Well, this was just a couple of days ago, and I don't recall ever getting a notice saying the website is fixed. So I was kind of assuming that it wasn't fully operational. And
you're talking about the website, David. I mean, I think David proceeded with abundant caution based on my guidance in terms of restoring the network. we could, I mean, the website, we could have stood it up immediately, but you never know. And so what we did is we wanted to make sure that the website had issues which was software related, that were induced by the software, and not issues that were caused by somebody else trying to do something to it in a malicious fashion. And so David, I don't know how long we were out in total, but we did that purposely because we had moved the voter site so it was operational. And we opened up a number of things like tax, how you go to CAPS, how do you get services, those are up. But there were some things that weren't available. But we did that purposely. That was to make sure that whatever we set up would not be subject to some other malicious, if there was such a thing, attacking. We found none. So we wanted to make sure.
So a follow on to that, we did get a response from David. And
Okay.
he said probably the reason why this problem did not go away was because you need to clear your cache or get rid of cookies. Now, in my opinion, that's kind of an old technology. And how many people out of 100 know how to clear their cache? And it wasn't going to change until that happened. So I don't know, Jack, you might want to weigh in here. So just want to find out what the expectation should be.
David, you want to talk to that? I mean,
Yeah, so reason why we put, and I specifically put that in the PR that we sent out countywide. And usually when we provide these updates, we provide them on the county website. That's what the link I had sent you. With the clearing the cache, there was a lot of DNS changes that we had made. So we put that in there just as kind of a, if you weren't hitting the site and you were still getting that kind of interstitial page that we had put, we'd kind of put that tech tip in there just to help people of, yeah, if you clear your cache, the page will come back up. And that's normal, and that's fairly normal internet procedures, especially when we're playing around a lot with DNS and been shuffling things around in the back. So that's pretty normal operating procedure for that type of stuff. And we wanted to make sure we communicated that out in that PR.
So you told us, but is this a general statement that's on the website someplace else?
I believe it was in the PR, at least the one I had written, and that was the one that was, I think, put on the site. So yeah.
In the public relations release, right?
In the newsroom, yes. Yep, and that's where we post these things.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin?
Yeah, hi. Hey, David.
Hi.
Yeah. Hey, so, quick question. I know the Department of Environmental Services, I believe they've gone to a new ticketing system. I was wondering if DTS was involved in that, and if they were, how did the transition go?
Report a problem. Yes. Yep. We went live and have been working with DES on that for quite a bit, and integrating that into the public website and My Arlington app. So there's a new version of that. We've actually moved that around on the My Arlington app as well. So it's a little bit more front and center. And it's also going to encourage use of the My Arlington app. That was one of the big things. Obviously, for me, it's kind of near and dear to my heart. That's something my team has developed over the years. So we'll see probably more adoption of Report a Problem in areas that we hadn't seen before because of that. But yeah, we had been involved with them.
It's also, this is Jack, also what you see is just what we had replaced. There's much more that could be done. And we have staged releases that are going to follow. Permit Arlington, for instance, there's a lot of times that people want to report on permitting violations or ask for help. And so we're going to expand in that area as well. There's a number of things that are coming out of the COVID-19 discussion, social distancing, people not doing that, not wearing masks, that type of thing. And so what we're doing is we're releasing this in a sequence fashion. But largely this is being driven by the Department of Environmental Services. They're replacing an application that had reached its end of life, and we wanted to find a way to at least stand up something that was much better and integrated better with our back-end services. See, what happens is in the previous system, you reported a problem, and then someone had to take it and actually send an email to the dispatcher to send somebody out to fix it. And if there was a street light, there was a question of, is that our street light or is that Dominion street light? And what happened is frequently people got responses saying, problem be resolved. Well, resolved in that case meant we handed off to Dominion. The light's still out. And so what we're doing with this new approach is to basically make sure that we have a consistent, authentic way of communicating something's happening, and we're not relying on fingers to be able to enter a request. That it automatically goes to a system that actually dispatches the right person to go out and fix the problem, whatever it may be, whether it be a pothole or a light out or trash in the street, we name it, graffiti, you name it. So that's the idea behind what we're doing.
It's great. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Now, we'd like the September minutes. Anyone have any additions, deletions, any questions? I'll entertain a motion to adapt if there's none, no changes. And again, thank you to Kevin. Do you have a new question?
Oh, no, I didn't take down
Okay.
my hand, I think. Sorry about that.
Okay, just checking.
So
What, Martha?
I said so moved.
Oh, so moved. Okay. All right. Martha's moving to adopt, and a thank to Angela again, who got these minutes out to us quickly. So Martha, is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against?
Aye. Aye.
Are you eyeing against, Jonathan, or are you?
Well, I'm unmuted aye now.
Oh, okay. You were just a slow eye.
Unmuted.
All right. Thanks so much. All right. So September minutes adopted. And again, Angela, we cannot tell you how happy we are to have you on this call and doing the minutes. Hallelujah. It's really makes it so much easier. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now a quick housekeeping. If we go with the fourth Wednesday in November, it's the day before Thanksgiving. It's Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. So if you all are available and if your preference is to meet on the 18th, the Wednesday before, we can do that, or we can keep it on the 25th. Just wanted to make sure we put that before the commission. So if we sign up for the day before Thanksgiving, that we'd have quorum, or we could change it to the 18th, whichever is the preference of the commission.
I would prefer the 18th.
Okay. Anybody else have a problem with the 18th? You able to make 6 p.m. to 7:30 on Wednesday the 18th, the week before?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, great. All right. So we'll Angela will get that out and we'll make sure. So it'll be Wednesday. We're going to change that to Wednesday, the 18th of November, rather than the day before Thanksgiving, even though you may not be traveling and doing all the things you normally do under COVID. All right. The next thing is the framework for privacy that John, I'll turn it over to you. And I know you got some updates from people, so hopefully we can finish this business and move forward.
Thank you. So I will go ahead and share.
Mhm.
I sent out copies of the letters. So everyone had a chance to review it. I made one technical edit based on David Husband's grammatical correction of day to day. And I didn't receive any other editorial comments, so I would move that we accept David's technical edit to day. Anyone want to approve, vote aye, oppose?
I'll second. And
Frank seconds. Okay, so it's up for review. All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Aye. Against? Any abstentions? Okay, we actually, Frank and I think we might have mentioned that we gave Christian a heads up this was coming, or could be coming if it gets approved by the commission, and he was very happy, very delighted. He said it was really timely. So we will get this to Christian, and then he'll introduce it to we'll make sure we'll get it to Libby, obviously, and Christian. So so approved. Thanks so much, John. Appreciate you shepherding this. Thanks to everybody, David, Mike, for your input. And we go forward. Now we're to the state legislative agenda items. And what?
I'm sorry, Mary. There was a substantive edit amendment proposed by Mike Carlton as well.
Right.
That I thought we should adjudicate as a commission rather than having me try and take it back. Mike suggested that we add an amendment, a paragraph at the end of the letter, reading this timely case of evaluating commercially available information technologies for use in our county's longstanding public health contact tracing function offers an excellent example of just how multifaceted, sensitive to local community context, and consequential such decisions are these days. In the months ahead, the Tech Commission will endeavor to provide the county with a similar but more generic set of scholarship-based principles and guidelines with which to invite public engagement on municipal digital planning. So, Mike, if you want to speak in favor of your amendment. Someone could, *6, Mike, I think is how you unmute yourself. You are unmuted, Mike.
Mike?
Okay. If there are any other discussion that people want to have on this before moving to a vote?
I think county should probably be capital to provide the county. We need to capitalize just minor and the county in the bottom there. Right there. Yep. Any comments?
My feelings that while it's generally, I concur with the sentiment. I thought it was maybe a little bit off topic for the focused purpose of this letter, but I wouldn't oppose it outright.
Phil, were you going to comment?
No.
Oh, okay. I just thought I saw your circle come up here. Any other comments on this one? That looks like Mike trying to speak, but for some reason.
Have I succeeded in getting unmuted?
Yes, you have. Go forth, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought that we should signal our intention to do this generally and more broadly going forward. I hold that intention pretty firmly. I made a presentation on digital planning at the community level and the legislative basis for it, and I thought it would be natural to signal as we send this kind of topic-specific guidance that we would try to send similar but broader guidance later. We didn't really have a conclusion on that at our last meeting as to that's what the commission wants to be or do. It is what I'd like to see the commission be and do.
Yeah, so you were looking at it as this is just one of many, right? I mean, in terms of there'll be more things to come, Mike. Is what
Yeah,
you
but
were
a great example, just a narrower gauge.
Yeah. And you'll be happy to know I just talked to Singapore, and everybody gets a special little issued by the government, mandatory to carry around now, and that's their contact tracing. And no one's complaining. So it's interesting.
You're not allowed to complain there.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't want to be caned.
Exactly. So any
if there's
comment?
no other comments, let's just say we move to a vote, and if it passes, we go in with the majority, and if it doesn't, then we go with the unamended letter.
Yep. So that's clear. This one the vote on this one would be supporting how it currently stands in front of you, and then if that doesn't pass, we'll vote on the one that didn't have the final paragraph. Okay, all those in favor of submitting this one before you that John has up?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain, Kevin.
Okay.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay, 2 abstentions. Okay. All right.
The
So
motion carries.
sounds like the motion carries. All right. Okay,
So
thanks so much, John. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
are there any other proposed amendments that anyone wanted to offer before we move to a final vote for approval? All right. I move to adopt this and approve this letter be sent to the board on behalf of the Tech Commission.
Second.
Martha seconds. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Any nays? Any abstentions? All right. Motion carries. Thank you, John. Once again, got this.
Thank you. I will
We'll
send you the final edited version, Mary,
Okay.
in a
Great.
Word format so everyone has it for the records.
All right. And we'll make sure that Libby and Christian get it. I know that it's one of the things they're thinking about because as there's obviously this is an issue, but there are going to be more issues around the tech balance between tech and privacy. So thank you. Next on our list is the state legislative agenda items. This is really timely. As we were sitting here, I got an email from Libby asking us for agenda items for state legislative, and Frank and I responded, yes, we're going and meeting now.
Right.
Because we wanted to make sure, I think you all remember in March no, it wasn't March, it was January or February, I guess it was January, when they said that we were out of sync, right? And we're trying to get in sync in the calendar. So one of the things Frank and I asked Christian is, could you give us a sense about state legislative agenda items and budget, right? So budget will come up in probably December, but this they need now. So Frank, there were some agenda items that you had that were pretty hot around this urban affordable access and those kinds of things in terms of, do you want to speak to that?
I think we had talked about, I think it was the Levine bill, wasn't it? That would have basically done, I think, a lot of the things that we've been advocated, trying to get recommended for the past few years, which was basically giving the county greater flexibility as far as lighting the fiber.
Right.
And I believe Levine's legislation would have probably gone even further as far as authorizing municipal broadband, is my recollection on that.
Yep. Okay. What else, John?
Well, so we've talked before, and I've heard discussion before that there's already legislative authority that would allow for creation of a special district that could offer internet connectivity. And so I guess my question is this really a legislative priority? What else are we looking for here, or what else are we recommending here above and beyond the authority that already exists to the board?
Well, I think the issue was a separate authority would have to be established, so it's actually it's a little clunkier than being able to, for the counties to be able to directly utilize any resources they may already have, for example.
So I guess to just try and understand what you're suggesting, Frank, is the idea is that the thing that we can't do is have the county government run and provide that service. We would have to create a separate entity that would not be the county board to provide that service, and that's viewed as a negative thing.
John?
I think that was some of the feedback we had gotten previously, yes.
Okay.
Hey, John?
Yeah.
And then Martha. Go ahead, Mike.
This is Mike. My understanding was in order to have the authority to create such a local entity, you had to pass a very low threshold for connectivity that exists in the state legislation. I'm referring, in my understanding of this, to a meeting I had with the Center for Information Technology people back in January of this year, in the context of trying to better understand the legislative authority requiring broadband and digital services plans. But I think that ability to create the entity is a function of having a very low current connectivity level, as is the case in certain rural areas of Virginia. But I don't think Arlington would qualify for the thresholds that exist under current law. I hope I'm accurate on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Mike, that was the discussions that we had, and this is what, a couple years ago at least, Mary, I think, was that Arlington could set up such a broadband authority. It seemed that, the way it was described was that it was really intended for sort of rural areas, but there's one down in the Tidewater that's being done that's in a fairly urbanized area, and it's actually been fairly successful, is our understanding. And I think Jack and David might be able to speak to it in greater detail, but I think the broadband authority establishing that is not, while it is a potential avenue, it is, I think, a more difficult one.
More bureaucratic. Martha? And then Jack, if you wouldn't mind. Go ahead, Martha.
Okay. I think I remember talking to David, husband, about this, and the other guy whose name I don't remember, about the same age group. And they were really wanting to have, we need to have our own thing. And at that time, we all thought, well, the law does not allow us to do that. So I think that if we really do want that, we ought to put in as a legislative item. We want to have that capability. And here are some ways you may think about how to get there. For example, a utilities commission. Now, Frank, maybe you know more about how this has been considered in other ways, but it would substantially change how it's done now.
Jack? And, yeah, thanks, Martha. Yeah. Jack, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, this is I think John summed it up. This is not a state thing. This is a local thing. The state basically has advocated, if you want to do something like this, then set up a broadband authority. And we've gotten that from the Governor's Broadband Commission. It's up to the county to decide what it wants to do. I know there's a group called Arlington Fiber, which is led by Tim Dempsey and one of the Bernie Sanders group, which is really pushing for having broadband access. And what they're looking for is open access. That concept of open access that's being used in a city in Idaho called Ammon, A-M-M-O-N, Idaho. So basically, they have a dark fiber network, and what they do is they offer up for anybody who would like to connect last mile, put together a group to do it. And then Lincoln, Nebraska's done the same thing. Roanoke is doing that. But it's up to the board, the manager, and the lawyers to decide which way they want to go. I don't think it's a state issue. It's really a local discussion. Do you want to go that way? And my guidance to Tim Dempsey, we had a great meeting the other night where 8 representatives of the community came in and talked about broadband access for affordable housing, why that was important to do. And I said to Tim, this discussion wouldn't have taken place a year ago if it wasn't for the efforts of what you've been doing and trying to raise the ideas and thoughts about this. There's an interesting thing. I see Jonathan's on the call, Jonathan Adelstein. I don't know if John would opine on this, but I was sitting in a discussion today with Representative Matsui, California. And she's chair of the Committee on Communications and Technology. And apparently she has oversight over the FCC. And she brought up an interesting thing, which I think is maybe the level we need to really consider. And that has to do with workforce. She said we have a major problem with the workforce right now. We have people unemployed, jobs in transition. And she had this comment, she had some leading experts on the phone with it at the time. She said for every $1 billion invested in the extension of broadband and 5G, it generates a corollary 3,000 jobs. And she's espousing that there be legislation that comes out that looks at this as not so much just a digital equity issue, but an issue with regards to workforce employment. And these are careers. This is not like you get somebody and you have them go string some wire. This is something where basically they can continue to grow their skill sets and have a viable occupation, which is not related to the traditional, occupations we've had in the past. So sort of interesting. So that, again, I'm not the lawyer and I don't speak for the county attorney, but it's really at a local level. This is a discussion that, the county has to have. Do they want to go this, make the effort? It's a lot of work, no doubt. Um, and there may be risk, I'm sure, but it's really a local issue, not a state issue.
So
Jack,
not a state agenda issue.
Yeah.
This is Jonathan. Yeah, just to respond, you're exactly right. We've actually given Congresswoman Matsui an award for my association for her leadership on workforce issues. There's really two different job drivers here. One is we have a shortage of workers in the wireless industry to install this equipment, and my association is actually trying to train them. We're doing apprenticeships, we're working with HBCUs and community colleges, but I think what she's referring to, those large numbers, are really the multiplier effect that wireless broadband creates economic growth in so many industries, like all the people that work at Facebook or Google or Uber that wouldn't be there without 4G, and other applications that are so new. We can't imagine the number of applications that are going to be developed as a result of 5G that will create enormous amounts of jobs and economic activity. One of the goals of people like Congresswoman Matsui is to create those jobs here and not overseas. So they want to make sure that we win and lead that effort. Of course, our own company here, Amazon, which is going to be, HQ2, is dependent on 5G for a lot of its business as well, and that will expand the ability of people to see products in 3D, et cetera. I mean, we can't even imagine the number of applications that will happen, but the job growth potential is enormous, and it seems like a place like Arlington that is a leading hub now of technology should be second to none. And I think we've taken a lot of the steps, at least to make that available, and having the equity ideas is good. And one thing we could do is think about how we could get people here that are underemployed, and we don't have as many as some parts of the country, to get into our industry and get trained up and be an apprentice to actually build the networks. But those are a small number of jobs compared to those that will be created by the networks themselves in other industries.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan. Martha, did you have another question?
Yes. Well, I just think that moving forward, I don't know if people would like to make our desires clear tonight, but when you think about how you're going to make it happen, I would encourage people to look at how Ellen Bosman created the after-school program in a way that people paid what their share of the cost, and the other part of it was funded through the county, kind of like what we're doing in digital equity. So just maybe to give them some ideas for how to move forward, because if Jack is correct that this is strictly a local decision, then let's help him make the decision.
Okay, great. No, that's a good thought, Martha. Any other state legislative agenda items that you want to, John?
I was just going to kind of second Martha's thinking there, in that the way I see it, I'm hearing the digital equity conversation, but it's a more it's a broader market conversation about the cost of access to the internet and data being too high, and us trying to find ways to bring it down. So I would be supportive of any legislative items that would drive at that, because I think the cost of living in Arlington is very high, and we can't subsidize our way out of that. We need market-driven solutions.
Yep.
And if we can bring the cost of things down, then subsidizing folks who can't afford market rate solutions becomes less. So it's a win-win.
Yep. Okay. Great. Martha, did you have another question, or are you just wanted to check?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Is my hand raised? I don't think.
Yeah, it's raised again.
It's raised?
Yes, it's all right. You push it again, it'll come down. So we'll put that out there. If there are any other thoughts that you have, this is very timely, and we can draft. This is something we can just. It's a wish list in a way, so we can just send the list to Christian as they consider what the what the actual what the board decides will be the agenda list. So if there are other things that you all think about before our next meeting, that would be the time to get it to us. Okay, Mike, are you
Mary,
trying?
is it
Go ahead.
yeah, is it enough for me just to mention to stop overcharging the incarcerated for phone calls placed by their families?
Yeah, and actually, I know that um, Frank mentioned something about that was coming up before, but yeah, that's
The
come up.
FCC continues to address that issue.
But yeah, Mike, that's great. Okay. Anything else that you all think of, please send Frank and me an email. Because we just want to make sure that in this wish list they have, we're obviously, they're not going to take everything, but it's good for us to think about what are the things that would really be big leverage points. So let's move on to we're sorry Frank's here because he would have been at the seventh game of the World Series, but good to have him here to do the legislative update. Frank?
All right, I will try to keep it fast since we're already at the witching hour here, but which is appropriate for Halloween coming up. Anyway, the Virginia Supreme Court ruled that Virginia law enforcement agencies can indefinitely store license plate info gathered via the automated scanners. And that case arose from Fairfax County PD, which stores for 1 year. I don't know what, if any, the policy is for Arlington, but they are authorized. Arlington PD would be able to store that license plate info for indefinitely, it looks like. The Eliminate the Digital Divide Act was introduced recently, which would provide $10 billion to states to expand broadband programs to extend reach of telehealth platforms, among other things, to underserved areas. Yesterday, the FCC, by a 3-2 vote, upheld its 2017 order rescinding the net neutrality rules adopted by the previous FCC in response to a remand from the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. And also yesterday, by a 3-2 vote, the FCC streamlined its rules for so-called compound expansion at existing tower sites to speed wireless broadband infrastructure deployment. State and local governments may not deny certain requests to modify existing wireless structures that do not substantially change the physical dimensions, which should promote co-location for 5G. Our own Jonathan Adelstein has praised this action on behalf of his association.
Hey, Frank, it was actually a result of a petition that we offered. So we asked the FCC to do it, and they did it. So
right. So kudos to WIA.
My bonus is set for the year.
That's right. And with that, I will conclude my report.
Mary, Frank's report reminded me of a comment that the police department made regarding records retention laws last meeting, and that maybe we don't have a specific recommendation on how to adjust it, but modernizing Virginia's record retention laws to address digital storage would probably be an important topic area for the General Assembly to consider.
Great. I'll look at that word. That's right. Good thought. And we'll look at that wording later, but yeah, good thought. Well, we did it. Thank you all. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before we do that, Mary, I just wanted to ask if we have an updated estimated date for the county staff's report on the comprehensive plan element on digital planning. Last meeting, we did not have an expected publication date.
Right. I think I don't. David, have you had an opportunity to brief Mark yet?
No, we have not.
Okay, so that'll be the sequence. once they brief Mark, then there'll be an update.
Okay. I would just like to, I think, echo Mike's concern that we move forward on that topic because it's of critical importance. And, you know, how we coordinate that with the county staff report, I think is important, but I don't think we can necessarily just wait and for us to get moving.
Yeah, it'll be on next. We didn't have time this time, but it'll be on. We'll have a discussion in our November meeting.
Great.
On the digital planning. Okay.
Right, and budget is also coming up. County budget is also
county
coming
budget.
up.
Right. And we'll probably extend an invitation for Tim Dempsey to come speak to us, who Jack was referring to about the Arlington. So that would be, so we'll see if he'll be able to do that. Though I think that would be helpful for us as well.
I recommended Mary that he contact you. So I think
good, Jack.
He's
Great.
more than willing. He's a good man. He's got a good team behind him, and their heart's in the right place.
Yep.
And they're not opposed to anything we're doing. It's just they just want to see this move forward. And also I echo John's concerns that we've got the privacy issue has to be addressed. And it's a difficult issue to address, but we have to address that because it's all about data collection, data usage, and it's we can't put a head in the sand and think it's going to go away. So even on a call like this, I'm sure the majority, we may not be in agreement, but that's okay because that's the only way we build consensus is to have earnest, open discussion about what might be possible and what we need to do to accommodate what the future beholds for us. So thank you, John, for bringing that up. We'll do our best to see if we can move this forward.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I heard a big aye.
Be safe, everybody. Take care.
All right, everybody. See you on the 18th of
Take care,
November.